One follow my phone, that is all it's trying to say.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
We had some technical difficulties with the pizza. I'm gonna blame it on
I didn't know we were having food.
I can go
Do we have a bit?
I'm gonna pass around the sign-in sheet actually.
Is Melvin coming?
Melvin should be here.
Oh.
And then if anyone, we have public comment at the end. If you'd like to speak with her, just let me know.
Do you have any of the agendas?
Um,
Did you print any stuff?
No, I don't. I just have electronic copies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what the secret code is? Or?
Good luck.
It's a long one,
It's a long one, and you know it.
no. No, I've gotten it a couple times, it never works. That's right.
And we have pizza if anyone wants some.
Oh, thanks, Eric.
All right.
Can I get it out? Go back. Oh. Let me see if I can access it. How can you get it here from this when I'm on the red? So it's the pictures of the water. Oh, here we go. That's it. I can't get it. Hey, Eric, do you know what the secret passcode is for here?
No, I don't. I was trying to get it. Did you know Rob's not here anymore? Robert? He moved up?
Oh, we
Yeah.
have to get him to open up and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to sit here about 30?
You can squeeze in there. I'll grab a seat.
I can go over there, fly out. Doesn't go over by Alex. We can make one big circle. That's the third time I lost my place, but I gave it up this time. Hello?
American. Sorry, we're starting to live, but
Oh, yeah, you're at the.
What? Oh, no, how sick. And those are
yes, it is. Yes, yes.
I'm at a meeting.
Yeah, I think since she has a code for us.
Unusual setup here. It's actually kind of nice. Thank you everyone for coming. Sorry it's a little late. I guess this is our first land use committee meeting for the new committee, so kind of exciting. Sorry to the new members that, you know, it took us a while to get set up.
Hi.
Everyone's ready? Let me see if they We're gonna go ahead and just begin with the agenda. It should be pretty quick. We're just trying to get acquainted with each other. And then going forward, we can have more official meetings with more meat on the agenda. This one, we're just gonna kind of get acquainted, like I said, and then see how we're gonna move forward.
Okay.
I'll go ahead with the roll call then.
Did you talk to Tim?
David Bailey.
Here. Yeah.
Cindy Friedman, she's not here, but she asked me if we can conference call her in, so after I'm done with the roll call, we'll try to call her. Dave Hudson? Alex Kim? Yeah. Baker Leck is here. Eric Gunn is here. Richard O just texted me, he's running late. Ken Sensen. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, we're going to do a brief introduction. We can kind of go off the cuff here, but
Can you speak up a little?
absolutely. We're gonna go off the cuff here a little bit. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go down the roll call one more time, and if, call your name, if you can just stand up and give a brief introduction, your background, and maybe any goals you might have, personal goals you might have to contribute to the land use committee. David's not here, so I'm gonna jump to Dave, Mr. Dave Hassan.
My name is Dave Hassan. I'm a retired civil engineer. I've worked for 30-plus years for Port Ranch Development Company and Chappelle Industries. I volunteered to be part of the committee because I'd like to make sure the Port Ranch is developed in the fashion that it was always intended to be, and that was the all community.
And then, Mr. Ellis,
I live in the Renaissance Project, which is just across the way. Maybe that's important.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you said it's 30-plus years.
33.
And Mr. Ellis?
I actually came from PRG. I just went to pay to learn our name.
And then,
Becky Levesque from the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council, and Mr. Casson and I, and Mr. Mel over here, is very instrumental in getting this school built. About 13 years ago, we started our community. And I'm specifically interested in making Porter Ranch the best possible place to be. Two of my current main projects that I'm involved in right now, one is to get a solar speed sign on Wilbur and Rinaldi on the east side of Wilbur for land use, and also to work with Viking Park to enhance the park and get some amenities because we are having some issues there. So those are the two things I've been working personally on, other than the things the board's working on.
David Bailey? We were just going around doing introductions of ourselves, just a brief introduction, if you don't mind.
I'm David Balin, I'm a resident, and I'm sitting on the board with you guys for land use development. I'm vice president of Title 365, and that's about it at this moment.
Right, thank you. And then I guess I'm next on the list. My name is Eric Dan. I am on the Port Ranch Neighborhood Council as well. I've been here, I grew up here, actually. I graduated from Chatsworth High School, but then left and did the college thing and travel and all that, and came back after getting married in 2011. Since then, we realized we're gonna be here for a long time, so might as well get involved and see how we can help, and that's why I'm here. Mr. Richard O, if you don't mind, a brief introduction.
I am Richard O. From America, Assassin and Joint Council. I have a young family, lives in Porter Ranch, so we've known each other for a while, and we're both living in Porter Ranch. This is fairly new to me. This is be my first time being part of the council, so I'm excited and really anxious to see what's entailed this whole council report. That's about it.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Ken Simpson.
My name is Ken Sampson. I'm a broker of Pole Baker in Porter Ranch on Former Rinaldi. I have lived in Porter Ranch, except for one year, since 1970. My family's been very active in the community. Because this area is such a great area, I actually decided to raise my own family here as well. So I have a daughter who's 18 that's off to college, and she'll probably come back faster than what I'd like. And then a son who's in kindergarten who basically keeps me on my toes.
Thank you. All right, so moving on. Melvin Canas from the Department of Labor and Housing, he was supposed to be, he might be running late. He was going to do a brief, kind of like a mini orientation. We're not the official Labor Council, so it's not going to be as comprehensive, but he was going to kind of go through things we should know about the bylaws as it pertains to the council, that can also pertain to us. He's unfortunately not here, hopefully yet. So we'll wait till he's here. Until then, let me just jump to the next item. Appointment of committee officers. At this point, I learned, this is all new to me as well, I'm learning as we all are. I guess for the officers, we don't necessarily have to have officers like the council does. But I would personally, as chair, like to appoint a vice chair. Just to kind of, be my partner, and in case I'm not available, he or she can take over for me. I learned that we don't have to do an election, it's up to me to appoint someone, and I've thought long and hard, and I would like to appoint Ms. Becky Levesque as our vice chair, if she's willing to accept.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
I'm surprised, yeah.
We could also have a secretary, but at this point, I'm gonna try and take the notes as much as I can, and then we'll, next meeting, if we need one, we can decide that as well. Okay. This is kind of the final one, unless Melvin comes. But I feel like it's an important one. Item number 6, what exactly is the Porter Ranch specific plan? I have 3 more copies, I'll kind of pass it down. I'm still learning what this is myself, but I'm confident that there are other members on this committee who know much more than I do, probably much more than most people, how it pertains to us as residents, how it pertains to us as a land use committee. So if we can maybe discuss it, I know we're not going to get through all of this tonight, obviously. I will post a link to this on the website for anyone who wants to download and take a look at it. I was wondering, does anyone here, as part of the committee, can we elaborate kind of a brief introduction of what this kind of really is? And
I can tell you, it's a tool that was developed approximately 15 years ago to have an organized development plan for Porter Ranch. It was kind of set the parameters of how Porter Ranch will be developed, both from a density, architectural, and commercial and residential standpoint. There's provisions in there. It's basically divided into 2 sections, a commercial section and a residential section. The commercial section requires, and there's also provisions for a design review body to be overseeing the specific plan. It's administered by the city planning department, so any action that anybody does for development within Porter Ranch specific plan, and for those who don't know the limits of the Porter Ranch specific plan, it's north of Rinaldi, the freeway, take it back. There's a strip of land south of the freeway from Corbin to east of Mason, that is included in there, and everything north of Rinaldi from the county boundary to the west to Porter Ranch Drive and Corbin. So it's kind of where Corbin comes into Porter Ranch Drive and Corbin are all the areas of the Porter Ranch specific plan. There's provisions for review by the design review for certain aspects, and that's handled by another body that's been appointed by the council office. Oh, no.
I'm on it.
And there might be, is there anybody else on that here? What else can I say about it? I mean, it's very detailed. It set forth density, size of lots, widths of lots for the residential areas. It sets parameters as far as height of buildings in the specific plan and density in the commercial area for height of buildings and density. It's a good tool, and it's something that if you're on the land use committee, you should get familiar with at least. It So anything violation of that, they would probably, flag it in their staff review of any application.
And David, a little history, it wasn't the original specific plan developed in 1991. And it's changed several times.
Yeah, it's been amended, it's been amended on several occasions. Yeah, 2008 was the latest one, and was the main change there was to allow for the school construction and some change off and trade-offs to get the school at this location.
Is it almost done? I mean,
Not really, there's quite a bit of development left. There's still, all the commercial area south of the, along Rinaldi on both sides. There's residential on the south side of the freeway. There's lots up in the northeast quarter of the ranch. And there's one across the street from the school. So there's probably another 2,000 homes to be built and a lot of square footage of, and I don't say, don't quote me with 2,000 because I'm just shooting.
About 1,500.
And then, the commercial has a lot of square footage density left to be built.
Mainly, 2 lots on Porter Ranch and all
Well, there is the northwest corner of Porter Ranch Drive in Rinaldi, the southeast corner of Porter Ranch Drive in Rinaldi, the southeast and southwest corner of Mason and Porter Ranch, and Rinaldi. I'm trying to think if there's any other commercial. That's the commercial, what's left to be built. Everything else is pretty much residential.
Sir, what's the purpose of this meeting? Is it to describe what's happening or to find out what the community wants or Mr. Bull?
Well, we're gonna have public comment, right after this discussion. We're gonna have public comment right after this discussion, so we can definitely address any public concerns or any ideas the public may have, at that time. I just wanted to get through the specific plan because personally I wanna learn about it, but I think it's very important for the committee to be familiar with it. because I
So are
think-
we discussing this specific plan
Yes, right now,
as it now unfolds? It's changed.
yes.
For example, the original specific plan that back in 2001 that we reviewed, and I've got it here, and commented on and approved as a community, had things in it like a new library, it had a community center, it had a junior high school site, which eventually got bargained off in the mix, and it had a lot of things in it. And of course, it restricted the heights of buildings. It stopped Chappelle, pardon the expression, Dave, it stopped Chappelle from building a water center here.
He's
But
really a
anyway,
good person.
is that what we're going to discuss? Because if we are, I'll tell you right off from my vision of Porter Ranch.
I would love to hear that, we would love to hear that.
I bought my house,
Yes.
I speak loudly because,
Or,
as we say in the
can
old
we just-
country,
We'll
I'm
get
getting
through.
deep.
We just kind of want to focus on the specific
We
plan
just want
right
to learn
now
what
when
it
we're
is
done with
first.
Okay, I
that.
have 5 short words.
Fine.
My vision of Porter Ranch, when I bought my house in October of '65, was that Porter Ranch was going to be the North Valley, Bel Air, or Brentwood. That was my vision, and I hope to see that vision continue after I'm gone.
Thank you. We're just gonna get through the basics of the specific plan at this time, and then after that, we can address any questions or concerns. Dave? Oh, Melvin. We're just getting through, one of our final items, once we get through it, we can jump
schedule associated to this phase planning of this area as to when they anticipate phase one is gonna be 100%, phase two is gonna be, what is the time frame?
The economy.
Can I just note, before we go on, I don't believe anyone here speaks with authority on this subject, we're just discussing it, so any answers that may not be accurate, it's possible that they may not be accurate. We're just discussing as we understand, because we as communities just want to understand. So any questions you may have, it may not be accurate, so I just wanted to disclose that.
I know a little bit about the specific
Yeah.
plan. I'm not,
You know a lot.
I'm not saying I know every little detail, but the basic overview of the specific plan, we had to learn about that when, especially Mel and I, when we were building the school with Dave and the LAUSD and Ken, you were involved in it. It pretty much spells out, it's the Bible, it's Porter Ranch's Bible in the area that Dave was discussing it. It kind of sets the tone, the rules. For instance, part of the community when it was first built was for single-family homes. Then it was for young families. So there's components of apartments or condominiums. There is a plan in here that spells out about facilities for the elderly. There's a community. When we built this room, it was supposed to take the place of the community room, but I have been told that it is not taking the place of it. That, you know, that's still on the books, that we get a community room, and that would be in the commercial area. And you know what, I want to introduce John Love. He's from Chappelle. He works for Chappelle, so he probably knows a whole lot more about that part of it. But it's true, there is a commercial part and there's a residential part. And I think the overall plan was to let people move here when they were first married. Then, when they had their children, they could move from a smaller home and go up to the next size home. And then up to the next size home, and then when they get to be our age, they can start going down again. You know, downsizing. So that's pretty much, and it's kind of the holy grail of Porter Ranch. And it serves us very well. It tells what streets go through. It tells, you know, where the medical center is going to be. And we got very involved in the specific plan when we had to build the school, because initially there were two sites, elementary school and a middle school. The district had money for one. So what we did through our bargaining is we said, great, let's do a K-8. So that we have a middle school component and an elementary school component on the same piece of property, and they doubled or tripled the size of the land that they gave us. And they gave it to us for free. So that was part of the specific plan arrangement. So that's pretty much, you know, it's here to protect us and our interests and make sure that it doesn't get overbuilt. And that's about it. I'm sorry. Chappelle. Or find that?
It was actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, his name was involved, it was Porter Ranch Development.
Yeah.
Porter Ranch Development Company, which is a joint venture between Chappelle and Liberty Building Company, which gave the land to the school and did some other things that maybe you're not aware of, that there were some other benefits that came with it. It's the improvements of the land, which are very costly to do the grading. Here before, there was a big hole here, and it cost money to develop that and put in the streets adjacent to it. That was all done as part of the arrangement with LA Unified School District. So I'm proud that the school's here, and I think it's a big plus for the whole community.
And if you look at like the perimeter of the school, they didn't put wrought iron fences in, they didn't put chain link fences in, they put steel. That Chappelle had everything to do with that. And I think you provide the upkeep for the outside of the school so it will always look nice as that. The homeowners association, so the school district doesn't take care of it, the homeowners associations. And it's a joint use facility which can be used by the public and by the school district. So the specific plan had everything to do with that, and it's really important for people on this committee to understand this and to start to learn it and to read it, because it's going to affect you very much.
I have a question about this specific plan. Just very basic question. Is it kind of, in a way, set in stone, the way everything within the boundaries was going to go where? In cases as it's built, or?
It has built-in flexibility. Commercial use can be just about anything that fits the commercial use as known by the planning department. So it's open, it's flexible, it allows for various uses. Residential is a little more detailed because it spells out exactly the size, minimum sizes, lots, and so forth.
I think there's some certain restrictions on like the type of businesses, like drive-through restaurants, things like that, correct?
And,
There are certain restrictions, I think.
and an overall maximum size, so there's parameters set.
Yes.
Within that, there's flexibility.
But it doesn't say you have to have this,
Oh, yeah.
this particular use. You have to have this, or you have to have this or that. It was open up to the developer to come back and share those thoughts, proceed with it, as long as it met those criteria that's in the specific plan, they should go forward. So.
Who's governance for this? So if someone, things get changed,
Planning department.
say
Department
planning department, say Los
yes,
Angeles.
the planning department will overlook it. They will probably, and like I said, there's a design review committee that oversees that, the development, and that's spelled out in here. So there's a lot of controls that set forth parameters that the developer would have to go through. And to tell you the truth, I'm probably, I live up here, so.
A few years ago, there was actually a proposal, here's what the new shopping area is going to look like. It was kind of rendering, here's the concept. Now, the world's flipped a few dozen times since then. And I don't know where that is on the drawing board. Is it something the neighborhood council would participate in, or
Well, and I'm here to, I can answer some of those questions, but maybe Eric,
Sure.
what might be helpful before, because I'm certainly willing to talk about what we've been working on, but one of the things I came to kind of understand is just how the committee is intending to work with, as a sort of subset of the neighborhood council, and sort of what the public process is, just because it's a new committee, so maybe that might be helpful, kind of give perspective to the group on how that's going to work.
Sure.
Melvin will give you that.
Yeah, Melvin will kind of outline everything for purposes of the committee. I think maybe each member might have a certain vision, something they'd like to contribute. My personal vision, I would say is, I think I understand it's just plan. I think our community is a little bit different than other communities, maybe something more urban where there's always something going on. There's always CUPs and people trying to get certain, variances or whatever. We don't have that here so much. We have one big developer, or two big developers at this now. I would love to just, build a communicative relationship with groups. And also, if anything, serve as educating the community, even ourselves, because I want to learn too. I'm not here because I know anything or everything, but I would just like to have this community serve as that and have it be an outlet for the developers as well as the community to communicate with each other and create some, continue transparency, continue openness. That's my personal vision. And as we go along, I think we'll organically kind of, hopefully, grow into what we're gonna be. This meeting is obviously very informal but yeah, and then obviously Melvin will kind of lay the groundwork for us and let us know exactly what
Maybe we should have been.
yeah. No, continue. As far as the specific plan goes, does anyone else have any other questions on it? I think it's something that we're just gonna have to keep going through and learn.
You just read it before you go to sleep.
I just, all I wanted to say is Becky, you did a very, very good summary of, in general, what it's all about. That was very well said.
I have a bunch of questions on it, specific plan, as you well know. What I would like to know is, where does the council stand as a council on such things that was promised to us in the beginning. For example, there's supposed to be a new library. The old library, as far as I recall, way back when we first started working with, or against Chappelle on the commercial stuff, there was supposed to be a new library because the old library didn't suffice and the parking situation is terrible. Number two, there was supposed to be a community center. Now, you explained about the community center. That doesn't cut water for us. Three, I'd like to see the committee of this council change its scope from just the land use committee to the land use and infrastructure development committee. Because we've had many instances of infrastructure problems. The cell phone towers, for example, we got a big deal on that one, and there's going to be more in 20 years. Now, I won't be around to see it, but you guys will. In 20 years, you may see surveillance cameras at various intersections. How does the council feel about that kind of thing? And there are other things that are involved. We should be looking, and this I know sounds Pollyannish, but 20 years ago we were talking about an elementary school and a junior high school, 25 years. Right now, we should be thinking of and looking for and exploring the possibility of establishing or putting some kind of commitment on a site for a high school. As this community develops, a community is no good without a high school. Porter Ranch is going to be a tremendous community in 20, 25, 30 years, and time flies. And we should be looking for a site before all the land is gone. And the only way there's land is if you go north and west. We should be thinking in terms of infrastructure development, as I said, sewers and things like that. We should be finding out from the community what the community wants. We should be making a list of it. We should be taking that list to the developers and to Mitch's office and talk about it in the future. I know there's no money. There's never any money. But we should be thinking in terms of what we need as a community. And we should find out whether or not they're going to continue with the specific plan of building a hotel and things of that nature. So there's so many things,
Thank you, yeah. Like you said, there are so
it's
many.
beyond
things.
say.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I can't answer on behalf of the council because this is not the council, this is the committee. I think those are things, hopefully we can address all those things. I think importantly, we got to learn the specific plan first.
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry to interrupt. But one more thing is very important. We should give back the old library site, get the new library, give that library site, the old one, what was it, Station 8? Give that to the fire department, let them expand the fire area and call it not only a fire station, but a disaster relief. Because I swear, well, I shouldn't swear, but anyway, within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have a tremendous earthquake. It's going to devastate the area. We need a disaster center. I've been through 2 earthquakes while living in this area. I know what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much, Sue.
What I didn't realize is, to my own ignorance, and thank you for bringing it out, because I looked at the specific plan before, and I had to sort, it only applies to Corbin West. And yet Chappelle, I live in a Chappelle home on
Right.
Lucina.
You're correct.
So what, is it just, is only the gated community land plan, or what happened to the rest of Porter Ranch? I'm thinking we've got 2 divisions. We've got
It was already developed.
council and, you know.
Well, the neighborhood, Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council,
Goes
which
off
we
the
are,
line
is
of
a
that.
very,
Yeah, but I just find it very curious that exceptions for, industrial or business development. But there are still a lot of homes in that area. And the library, according to this, is not in the Porter Ranch specific plan. It's not in,
Yes, it's in the original.
well, the original, but it's not in this one.
I know,
Tampa is not in it. So I wonder if we should look at that eventually or not. You know, kind of, you see it living on the east side, that when you're driving along in Aldi at Wilbur, it says, "Thank you for visiting Porter Ranch." And it's like, what are we? You know, I thought we lived in, it's just, oh, I noticed that. That sign came from somewhere, and I have no idea, but, what is it? I know you're not concerned, you're just doing a commercial, which is basically right out, you know, by Walmart, and all along there, which is fine. It's just, for the next time it's revisited, the specific plan, maybe we ought to include, to at least looking at it.
Well, I can answer that question.
So these development plans take a long time to develop.
I know.
And I'm sure there was an original plan for the side that you live on that is down in the city. This, to me, as a resident, I read this 2 years ago. Pulled it off the website because I was interested to see what was going on around here.
What's your
This,
name?
I'm Victor Yang.
Nice
I live
to meet
over in
you.
Promenade. But yeah, I mean, I saw all the earth moving equipment up there, so what are they gonna build? So I actually went out to the LA City site and found all this stuff, so I've been through it, and I actually did a little bit of development when I was living in Arizona, so these things are done so many years in advance, so I'm sure your side had an original plan for when that was built out. This was probably put together originally in the early 90s when they started looking at all this land, and someone had to come up with a framework, and that's all this is a framework on how big you can build, how big the lots have to be, what your setbacks are for your residential. That's what it is to me, but I've got a question about what you guys really want to do with this, because to me, this document belongs to the city, and anything you want to do to change it goes through the city. You might make a recommendation, but we really don't have the.
I don't think that's.
I don't think that's right.
No, I don't think that's right.
Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time we'll really hear anything about the specific plan if something changes on the specific plan. Other than that, it's also in stone.
Exactly, so that's why I'm just trying to figure out I got this email last night, so I might as well come and see what's going on.
Sure, thank you.
I'm just
I know it's gonna
curious
last-
as to
yeah.
what you actually want to do with this committee in relation to,
In relation, well, I think, my thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, anybody, to understand the specific plan is important because it would manage the expectations of community perhaps. To understand that there is a specific plan in place, that not every single thing is gonna come to our table because it's already kind of, framework is already kind of there. So we can kind of use it as a guide to understand any future developments going on. So that was the purpose of understanding. I think because it is our community, we should understand it first. I don't think we're gonna be disputing it unless it's absolutely necessary.
the only other thing I would think is the gentleman wanting the infrastructure. It's already laid out what belongs where, but yeah, if you want to make a grab for a little piece of this section, you have to go, get the plan amended to.
Right.
To the planning.
Well, I think what we as a community can do as a Hamilton County Committee is we can maybe accelerate some of the development of kind of
Exactly.
maybe not so much residential, but
The commercial, yeah, exactly.
And like Becky said, it's been a lot of years in school, and it's because we forced it as a neighborhood council. So that's something we can do.
Can I just add, one little thing, and I know you have a hand up, but I think the history of Porter Ranch is really important when you look at the concept of the specific plan. Because as we all live here, every time a development came in, we don't want anyone to develop over here. And then they develop it. We don't want, and it's still going on today, we don't want anyone over here, but we're all here, and if the city would have listened to that, none of us would be here. So there was a group called Pride. Porter Ranch is developed enough that tried to stop all of the building that was west of Tampa. And they have succeeded. None of you would probably be here. A lot of you aren't going to be here. but a lot of people wouldn't be here. So the specific plan was designed because there was open land to specifically state what was gonna be here, and to control, you're gonna have development. You can't stop it. The key is to control it. And the specific plan is a document that was meant to control the development of the reservoir ranch in a certain given area.
You mentioned about the other side. Everything in Northridge and Porter Ranch comes under the Northridge Community Plan. And specific plans are developed along the way to augment the community plans. So you really have two things. And one example to answer your question is the specific plan says a real estate sign cannot be more than 6 square feet. Well, I just took a 7,000 square foot listing on a 2-acre lot, and I didn't read the specific plan. And I tell my sign guy, I want you to put up the biggest sign you have. I want it 6 by 10, 60 square feet, and it's sitting up there, and you're driving by every day and going, what's that guy looking for? Why do you got such a big sign up there? The point is that would be illegal. So if it was brought to somebody's attention, the neighborhood council was familiar with the specific plan, they would say, Mr. Kuzman, we want to let you know that you're probably going to have to change your sign, before the city planning comes out and writes you a citation.
Thank you very much.
Right.
After Irv and then David will just wrap it up and let Melvin.
Suggestion, as a committee,
Yes.
we should make up a list, regardless of what the specific plan says. We should make up a list of what the community wants, with each community member who wants to, presenting an idea. Take this list, some of it may be Pollyannish, some of it may be completely impractical, some of it may be worthwhile. Take this list, sit down with Mitch's office, whoever he designates, and go over this thing with him as to this is what this community wants. We should take as our role model what Granada Hills has done. You know that in Granada Hills there are 3 high schools within shouting distance of each other. There's this huge new fire department building, firehouse community center on Balboa. And what does Porter Ranch have? Zilch right now. And what we should be doing as a committee,
Beautiful fight.
putting together all the ideas, even though some of it may be junk,
No, absolutely.
and sitting down with Mitch and finding out in the next 15 to 25 years
I think we should talk
what
about
we
that.
can really
Yeah.
push, and push for an on-site location for our.
Thank you, Irv. And once we hear from Melvin, see how that works, we're just going to grow organically within the framework that Melvin's going to lay out for us. And yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I do really quick.
And then
Wait,
this lady.
this lady had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
For a long time.
Okay.
And my question, I think, is for you about the commercial side. What's happening there? I didn't get a clear answer even tonight, so you talk about the residential. I see the residential, I don't see anything happening. Proposals
It's not on the agenda, so there's no answer. Yeah,
Can
but
we get your
And
name?
you don't know anything about it
I
either.
understand. I mean, I want to take over your meeting and.
we can definitely talk about that probably at the next meeting and get some clear answers. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about agenda.
So long I'm waiting.
It's yeah. I mean, it's something that everyone wants to
Yes,
know.
please.
We want to give proper time to that.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
absolutely. We'll do that.
Is there any way to have access to that document? Is that
It's online.
online?
Yeah, we'll put a link on.
Yeah.
because-
So all you have to do is,
If you got the
Like
email
it.
too, there's a link in the email if you were,
Yes.
if you got the email.
It's gonna be mailed separately.
How many of you?
besides,
can
just
make
type
motions
in
for the next
Porter
meeting?
Ranch specific plan and print it out.
Okay, last comment from Mr. Bailey?
Pass on, let's go.
Let's get to it. All
Oh,
right.
no, I want to know your question.
Oh, no, mine was very similar to, in regards to Chappelle, to see if they were in the position to share with us their vision of the west corner of Porter Ranch Drive and Rinaldi, but since it's not on our agenda,
Currently, it's, yeah.
we won't share it.
And look, I've heard also people come to me and ask questions about what's happening between Chappelle and Bowl, and I understand that wasn't necessarily understood by everyone, and so, I mean.
Yeah, I think probably at the next meeting, we'll put it on the agenda. I'll talk to Mr. Love directly and get it agendized.
Fair enough.
Frank Sue and Tola. Okay, Melvin, we're gonna jump back to, item number 3. Melvin, this is Melvin Canas, everybody, from the Department of Neighborhood Development. He is our, community advocate and direct liaison to the city, and he's gonna tell us what to do.
Well, so I hope. No, a lot of the comments that were being made here is exactly, I think, what you were saying, a lot of it, I think is the purpose of why the committee is here to make up its own purpose, and I understand this is the first meeting, and we'll see where this, takes, you guys as committee members and the Port Orange and the neighborhood council as a board together. Yeah, it's really up to you guys, but I mean, you're hearing from all of your stakeholders. Who are the committee members? Is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay.
There's one person absent, so it's 8.
Also, say for
Who's absent?
Cindy.
All right, well, so, I'm not so much here to tell you what you're going to do. I mean, what you're going to do and your focus is in the community as an arm of the neighborhood council. It's going to be up to you guys in listening to your stakeholders and your community members. My role more is, like I do with any other neighborhood council, in other committees, is to go over more the nuts and bolts, if you will. So it's not so much not much sexy stuff, if you will, just to make sure that, like if someone has their, comments that they want to make, that they're being addressed, but also you guys as other very important things as committee members, issues, so making sure that the things that you are going to be considering and taking action on, because as a committee you are going to be taking actions, that they are being done from an objective position, and not from a personal, what's in it for me position. So that's more what I wanted to touch on. And I brought just a handful of material. I'm not going to pass them all out. But let me just read a few things, just to start off, because it's kind of part of the conversation that I heard going on. Let me just start off. It says, few among us have not heard that many jokes about committees. And I'll just read one of them. A committee is a cul-de-sac down which ideas are lured and then quietly strangled. I don't know, a committee keeps minutes and wastes hours. I never heard something like myself.
Where'd you get that?
I know, yeah. Actually, there's so much, yeah. But actually, I would think totally the opposite when I think of committees in some neighborhood councils, and I think it comes a time, particularly for Port Orange Neighborhood Council. Because I remember, I'm glad to see Mel here and others of you that I've worked with over the years since going back 2007, 2008. And driving over here back then, Port Orange to me now seems so much different than when it was 2007, 2008. It seems so much busier. It seems so busy, so much more traffic. And so I think this is an opportunity time for the neighborhood council to create a body like this, to oversee that and kind of, get in front of it as things move along. I lived in Eagle Rock, and when it was sort of like a community up in the corner of Northeast LA, and I was looking to buy a house there, all of a sudden I cannot afford a house in Eagle Rock. Of all places, I was able to afford something in Pasadena and not in Eagle Rock, which I thought I'm never going to get food in Pasadena, no Pasadena was. So things happen, and I think it's time for groups like yours to get involved in the process. Like you said, there is a specific plan, there is a general plan, and that's part of the process also to understand how those relate to each other and how they impact the community. And they are not written in stone. And every few years, planning department does sort of open up the doors, if you will, to see how we can revamp it and what are the needs, what are the changes in the community. I know when I was working in the central area, that was happening a great deal. I don't know that it was happening citywide, but in the central area, planning department had a concerted effort to involve the neighborhood councils in forming focus group, working groups to get community input in making changes to the general community plans and also the specific plans. They had, weekend-long workshops, taking up the whole room here on giving the basic understanding of, how to take a look at a community from a planning and land use perspective, of how the planning department sees it, but also how the community sees it, what would they like to see, how to do, not just more planning, but smarter planning that meets the needs of the community nowadays. So that is going to be part of your work, I think, and then also along with that, definitely, I believe Porter Ranch does it, I think, as well as any other neighborhood council in better in working with your elected officials. That is going to be a key point of this group to develop those lines of communication with your elected official, because yes, someone mentioned, this is not something that if we're talking about making changes to the specific plan or any kind of plan, it is something that happens at the city government level. But depending on that kind of communication relationship you have with your elected officials, you can have a bigger impact in that. So that's just a general statement that, that goes to any neighborhood council in the city. But I'm glad that this is happening. This is the first time for Ranch City Planning Commission? No?
No, what do you say? When Mel was in charge.
In specific, the meeting dealing with this, okay, so, and I know recently, I feel like there's been so much going on that, in conversations with Eric, it seemed that it's necessary to create this separate space, if you will, to get into the issues more. Not to lure them into the corner and strangle the ideas, but to open them up and give everyone more opportunity to come and talk about them. And eventually this group come up with hopefully a well thought out, well planned out recommendation that goes back to the full board. And then let the board, discuss it with the committee's report, and see, then take it from there. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've dealt with neighborhood councils who tell me, Melvin, we approved a community impact statement. We approved a position statement on this project in the community, but it's just sitting there. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so one thing is saying the board approved it, but then what happens afterwards? And this is where this committee is going to come in to be able to take it further.
Just to clarify that point, it's my understanding that this is a subcommittee of the neighborhood council, so we can get into more detail on the plans and recommendation to the full neighborhood council, so we can make a recommendation to the full neighborhood council. Then the full neighborhood council may take a vote or go whichever direction they want on the issue before them. But their decision is just a recommendation. They're a recommending body. There's nothing saying that this body has control over everything. We just recommend what is the community's position, and we relay it onto the board, the neighborhood council board. They'll vote on it, and they're a recommending body, not a governing body. So keep that in mind. We're not here to control development. We're here to make recommendations to the neighborhood council. They'll make recommendations to our city council and to the planning department if they ask.
So the neighborhood council is an advisory board.
It's basically an advisory
committee,
and we're not a governing board.
Not
We don't set development. We don't take on issues. Keep in mind, we're only here to make recommendations.
Yeah, but we, as residents of the community, we should make our wishes known. I mean, we pay taxes, this is our community, we're sure, we're advisory, we can't take action because we don't govern, but they want our opinion. If they didn't want our opinion, neighborhood councils would never have been formed.
No, exactly, and that is exactly the purpose, and thank you for bringing that up, because I may have been, I think one step or making some assumption, but that is exactly correct. Neighborhood councils are an advisory body of our city government. And technically, your committee is sort of like an advisory body of your board. And so, but it really, like I was said earlier, I think here in this part of the city, you have a great opportunity to work with an elected official or in offices, government offices that from my experience, to be honest with you, in dealing with other parts of the city, want to hear from you and want to have those conversations and communications with you. So, but it's not automatic, so that's what I want to say, that it's basically up to you guys to drive it as well, and to hear, what the community has to say. I know one of the things that was mentioned here earlier is that, the idea of doing, I don't know, like a quick survey of what, we want this committee to do. Perhaps it's not so much dealing with a specific plan, because the specific plan for our needs currently is fine, but what else do we want to do? So that can be a guiding document for you guys in the committee, in telling you that. One of the things that I wanted to just get into some of the specifics is that, and I asked who the committee members are, because, there isn't one particular way, how you're going to be conducting meetings. But when I walked in, I automatically thought that the people here in the front, were all the committee members.
Right.
So
We didn't set up properly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's fine. I mean, and I've seen other groups set up like that, more, more organic, I just said, but for the sake of, of you guys, getting into the nuts and bolts of it, I identified who those committee members are, so that is why I wanted to bring this up for you, more for your use, I guess, particularly, and to share with them with your committee members, to identify who the committee members are, so that also the public know who the committee members are. I would recommend that perhaps, just visually they sit somewhere where also the members will know, the community members will know where who they are when they come in. It's going to be important to know simply because of, I think as neighborhood councils are progressing more and more, some elected officials will rely on your input, on how they, just getting that added input and how they want to proceed. And so having that clarity of how you function and who speaks for you, or for the neighborhood council, it will help them know. And so, please, if we can fill that out and develop one of the things that this group will need to establish is a standing meeting, a regular meeting schedule. I don't know if it's going to be this kind of the 5th week of the month, and this month is laid out. But to come up with that.
We'll do that the 5th Wednesday.
Once a year.
But develop that because, again, just from where I stand, it was within the city, with our department, I deal more with the logistics of how neighborhood councils function, particularly committees. And one thing overall is that a committee will technically function the same way a board functions, with all the same requirements, pretty much. The only thing being that what the actions that you take really are more recommendations, right? Recommendations that will go on to the board, and the board will do what they want with it. Of course, they will come with a recommendation for you, and that should carry some weight. But with that saying, what I meant was that, when you are meeting, your agenda should follow a particular structure, also that makes it clear what are some of the issues, and we can share this with you guys, and we can share some of that. And there's an example there, particularly also from a planning and land use issues of how agendas are to be created, so that someone coming to the meeting, they will know, is my issue going to be addressed tonight, or can I bring it up? Will the board discuss it? Definitely there will be times that they can bring up an issue that is not on the agenda. As you know, during your board meetings, there's regular non-agenda public items, public comments, and you can direct them. Can I ask you to speak with the chair of this committee or this committee members further, and we'll entertain it and we'll discuss it, put it on our agenda for our upcoming meeting. So this is just a sample of an agenda. I have this electronically. I believe I sent it to you, Eric, as well, so that you can use it moving forward, so that we know that when your meetings are scheduled, there's no issue with how the meetings are being scheduled and how the agenda are being written. A lot of times, neighborhood councils, neighborhood councils are government agencies. We are under the city charter. And any committee under the board also will abide by the same regulations that the neighborhood council abides. And one of them being the Brown Act. We all know about the Brown Act, having proposed meetings either 24 hours in advance for special meetings like tonight, or this is your first meeting, or the normal is, when it's a regular meeting, 72 hours in advance. It's the minimum, you can do more than that. You can do more than that. And
Sorry, Joe. Now that we're on that, not all the committee members might not be familiar with it.
Yeah.
Can we just kind of touch upon what the Brown Act applies to
So,
us?
all right.
Can I touch on one thing with the Brown Act? The Brown Act, as a committee, then this is a question. How many, members do we have on the committee would, can meet together without posting notice of the public meeting? And that's question number one. Question number two is, can this, committee have a meeting with no public comment? And the reason I say that is we have maybe 7 or 8 committee people on our committee. We're not permitted as a body to talk about anything with more than 2 or, if there's more than 2 or 3 people present, we cannot talk about land use who are on our committee. So I say, if we need to talk about it as a committee, can we post notice for a meeting and have no public comment, but they're welcome to come and see what we have to say, so that we can kind of get on the same page and see what it is we want to do. Because now, none of us can meet, we can't have a meeting in between this meeting and that meeting. This is the meeting, so that's my question.
So technically, the answer is, your question is, can you have a meeting without general public comment or public comment at all? So
If it's posted.
If it's, no, so the answer would be no.
Yeah.
Okay. Technically, any meeting, any meeting that you have at the neighborhood council level, and this goes with the board or any committees underneath the board, we are either gonna have regular meetings, which are your monthly established regular meetings, so that's what I think I'm asking this committee to identify when are you gonna be, when are those going to be, so that the public knows, so at this day of the month, at this location, at this time, this committee will be meeting. Okay, and that's a regular meeting. And if you need to have any extra meeting in between the regular meetings, you can have the special meetings that require only 24-hour meetings. Those 2 types of meetings will always require will always require public comment, whether it be general public comment or comments specific to agenda items listed. Okay? Now, you can control that. You can control it given, how much you want to control it, given the dynamics of the meeting going on, how many people you have. It would be helpful to have speaker cards, which are also made available electronically, so that asking people to fill them out, so you know how many people want to speak. If there's too many, you can limit either to 1 minute or say, I'm gonna allow for 5 to 10 minutes for those who are speaking in favor, 5 to 10 minutes for those speaking against, and the rest, please fill out speaker cards so that we can have you on the record how you stand on this issue. And I see this, a lot of times this is going to be very important to manage that, particularly with planning and land use matters. I mean, across the board in the city, planning and land use committees where I see the importance of managing that well. On these other issues, on nuts and bolts issues, so that the public has the opportunity to speak. Okay? So with the...
I'm not trying to I want the community involved. I guess what I'm describing is an executive board meeting when you're a corporation. The executives have a meeting, they decide, like right now, my husband is advertising director. They're having meetings to discuss what they're gonna do in 2015. Well, we can't do that. We have to do it with everybody. We can't just say, we wanna save you guys from wasting your time, come to this big meeting. So we're gonna get together, we're gonna put an agenda together, we're gonna see what everybody wants to do, and then we're gonna have a meeting. This is the meeting, we can't have an executive.
Under the Brown Act, there is the ability for a government agency to hold emergency meetings or closed door meetings where the public will not be allowed. However, that part of the Brown Act doesn't really apply to neighborhood council. That is more for city council, I think city council committees, but not at the neighborhood council level. So we're pretty much going to be following special meetings or regular meetings. And I know I saw your hand, so I'm going to get to you right now after the other point. The other question was, it's important to note also, and I had this conversation with Eric, how many members can the committee have? And that is, you can have as many members as you want in a committee. The issue is how many board members serve in a committee. And so, given, and that depends on the size of the full board. Your full board is, how many? 11. According to your bylaws, your quorum is? 7. Okay, so just to walk everybody, I walked with some of you on this, and it's in here, I think it might be something in your bylaws already. So 7 is your quorum, technically speaking, for the board meeting. 7 board members can be present, have a meeting, and decide on a matter for the full board. A majority of the 7 is 4, right? So 4 board members can technically decide for the 11, the body of 11. Okay? So that impacts how many board members can serve on a committee, in the sense that you cannot have that same number of 4 serving in a committee. Because that is technically be construed as a board meeting at one point, if you have to stay as a board decision.
So you only have three board members.
3 or less, up to 3 or less board members on a committee. So you can have 3 members of the committee who are also board members, but as many stakeholders as you want. Again, with the understanding of how much, you don't want to make it too big either, that it becomes hard to manage. Keep it effective, but yeah, you want as many people to participate. Okay, so in terms of board members serving in a committee, no more than 3. You can have 1, but no more than 3.
Where's your answer to that issue?
Yeah, right. Okay, right. Someone asked me that question. Was your answer? Yeah. So is that clear?
Since we have 8 members, what constitutes an actual quorum for an official meeting?
Well, no, so that is for you to determine also. I mean, so technically we go by it's a simple majority rule. So a quorum is a simple majority of the total. So 8 would be 5. 50% plus 1 is what we don't normally call that.
And what happens if there's only 5 members here? Do you have to have 5 yeses?
No,
A simple quorum, a simple majority of the president.
Right.
So 3 then.
Right. So you have 8 members. Of those 8 members, only 3 are board members, right? So we're good with that. So now, of those 8 members, for this committee to have an official meeting and conduct business, your quorum would be 5. I mean, we operate by that general rule of 50% plus 1. So being 8, it would be 5. Okay, so out of those 5, assuming you only have 5, then a decision is made by a majority of those 5, which will be 3. Okay. So again, this is one of those things where your board may, and I don't know if Porter Ranch has standing rules. Do you have standing rules adopted?
Standing rules.
Standing rules.
That's the difference.
Aside from the bylaws. So something for this committee to look into developing standing rules where this kind of guidelines, rules for the committee will be indicated in there. That our committee is made up of 8 members, our quorum is 5, a board action or a committee action will be a majority of those present once quorum is established.
So would that, once we establish the standing rules for the committee, would that supersede the bylaws of the council and the bylaws?
So this is for your own committee.
I know, but the bylaws still govern the committee.
Right, exactly, overall, yeah, so yeah, you cannot be, they cannot conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. Right, okay, yeah, they cannot be in conflict with the bylaws of the board. Let me go to your question.
I believe that closed meetings are only limited to certain circumstances where they are discussing personnel or litigation.
Which neighborhood council boards will not do. Yeah, exactly.
Personnel, what was this next one?
Litigation.
Only certain instances of litigation and certain instances of personnel.
Just so I'm not violating anything, I say, even though I am a board member, I am not on this committee, I can attend as a stakeholder.
So I will need to get you I think the joint meetings agenda. So there is the ability for committees to post what we call joint meetings of the committee and the board. So in case the committee, in particular, expects that what we're dealing with an issue that is pretty big right now, and I'm expecting more than 3 board members to attend who will want to participate in the discussion. So then we post a joint meeting of the committee and the board to allow any number of board members to attend and fully participate. Okay? Outside of that, board members can come and serve as observers. Okay? So, but the joint meeting agenda allows you to invite any number of board members to come.
For the situation today, it's okay, Sue is observing, participating as a stakeholder, so it's not.
And by participating, I mean definitely, so the only ones who can vote are the committee members.
Right.
Yeah.
So that we have clear.
That's the definition of participation.
That's a participation from a committee perspective in making decisions. But it could also be, construed as, influencing you guys as voters, the comments made by the public. So that's why it's clear that, in case of that moving forward, we need to make sure that, and particularly how small Porter Ranch board is, the Porter Ranch Council board is, so only 11, with, no more than 3 board members being able to come, on their own, we may need to consider having posting your meetings as a joint. Okay, so before I recognize you had a question, sir? Did you?
You answered it actually.
Okay, all right.
But I think that we're wrong, and by participating, Sue's on the board, and since we already have 3 members, she would be a 4th,
Okay.
which would be contrary, so she can't say anything at the meeting, she has to be an observer, and am I correct
Yeah,
with that
correct.
interpretation? So therefore, if you are a board member, you can't put out a speaker card, you're just an observer.
Yeah, so normally in those cases, they'll definitely be here as an observer.
I'm glad you clarified.
Right, yeah, exactly, be here as an observer. Yeah,
So they're barred from making any public comment.
any public comment.
So she couldn't make a comment as a stakeholder? Because she's not coming in here as a board member. She's elected by.
Yeah, but she could influence the rest.
So yeah, so moving forward, let's definitely post some, joint meetings. I mean, this is an introductory meeting. The issue definitely comes into play when there's action items on the table. That is when you definitely need to observe that the comments that those are your take, and who are you hearing from in making those decisions? And technically, who are you hearing from in making those decisions before taking a vote? But in any case, just general public comment, you can fill out a speaker card or speak with us if you want to.
When it's a choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the record, I apologize, I did not know that.
Can you recommend?
Yes, sir.
I believe the extra board members are not permitted to participate in discussion or debate.
Correct. Yeah.
They may ask a question if they have special knowledge, I believe, but they may not be able to.
That's your interpretation.
No, we had a non-joint meeting.
Yeah, normally, the issue is that, it's, but, the issue has come up that sometimes, if you're sitting there and I'm a board member, I'm a committee member here, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me with mean eyes, and, I'm gonna argue that you're intimidating me, and you're voting a certain way, and so that you're communicating something with me, so it's taken to that level.
Therefore, your duty as the chairman is to ask them to leave or ask the sergeant arms to escort them.
Well, they can they can be there as observers, no, they can remain. Yeah, they can remain.
With a straight face, with no expression. If they had bells,
that brings up a good point of, if you, as committee members or as board members, we don't, advise you that you ever remove someone, okay, physically, touch them or push them out of the room or grab them and drag them out, just you can advise them, we'll take a recess, but do not, put their,
that's why we call.
Exactly.
Don't shoot them like
Yeah.
happened recently.
Okay. That's big, so yeah, so the main thing, yeah, no, the main thing is this, like, so yeah, so joint meetings most likely, because I'm just gonna give it the small size of the board. But, and, or, if you wanna play it on a case-by-case basis, depending on the issue that's coming up, you may have a feeling as a committee, this is gonna attract, too many board members that may not, or you.
So general state practice, we should
Yeah.
put as a joint.
As a joint meeting.
It is what is expected.
Exactly.
I have a question, but it has nothing to do with any of this. Do we have to fill out a seminar form?
Good question. No, no, you don't.
Okay, thank you.
You don't. Yeah, no, that was an issue for neighborhood councils a few years back as part of,
Can you describe what this seminar form is for?
basically, it's to disclose financial interest.
Oh, no.
Okay. However, it was the arrangement made, if you will, that instead of having to fill out a financial form disclosure statement like that, is that board members, this is only for board members, but we, especially for this committee, we strongly recommend that if you're a board member, you need to take the government ethics training. Ethics and open government training is required every 2 years. It's required of every city employee, including myself and any elected official. So if you're a neighborhood council board member, you need to take that every 2 years. And that, is in lieu of the Form 700. However, for this committee, I would also strongly advise to be aware of those, because you are going to be dealing with issues, financial matters. And this handout that I passed out here this is actually one that I give to board members. But like I said, I treat committees the same way I see boards, because you are going to be taking actions. You need to be aware of certain, all the same rules. This is an excerpt from the ethics and open government training, in the general sense of how you conduct yourself at committee meetings, given the subject matter you're going to be dealing with. There is the public interest standard and the common law doctrine that basically dictates, how are you looking at the issue before you. Like I said earlier, are you voting to support, this a recommendation to support, a permit for a business coming to the community because you happen to know the owner, or you are friends with them, what have you, or are you looking at the subjective? And government ethics training deals with that, so that, so I strongly recommend it. It's on the website, it's available online. Okay, there's a certificate that you receive, and the website is empowerla.org. Empowerla.org under Empowerment Academy section.
Question. I know as board members, we're required to do ethics training for us and the financial. As a committee, are we also required?
You're not required. The requirement is for the board members. The requirement is for the board members, not the committee. However, I strongly, particularly for planning and land use committees, I strongly urge that you also become familiar with those.
I'll email everyone.
When you take actions, again, similar to the board, how do you take actions in the board? How are those recorded?
It has to be agendized.
Okay, definitely agendized.
Prior
Right.
to the post.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, yes, I'm referring to the roll call vote.
We want to, we shouldn't do. roll call.
Yes, because now, this is in January of this year, the Brown Act, the state law, was amended by state government to require that any government agency, including committees, report, the requirement is that they report how each member voted on the issues before them. And there's, you don't necessarily have to do roll call every time. Okay, that's something I think a misunderstanding sometimes, that you have to do roll call, but to keep it nice and clean, if you will, that just get it over with, particularly when you have a small number of board members that you're going to go through. But often, you as the presiding officer, you may have a feeling of how this is going to go, particularly when it's administrative matters like approving minutes or approving a report, perhaps that you're getting. This is going to be unanimous. So you can simply ask a simple question: is there any objection to calling this a unanimous vote?
And then you don't have to.
Then you have to go name by name. You can always ask, are there any abstentions, you know, or someone who may not want to vote? Then you save yourself, you know, 2 or 3 minutes perhaps. But, you know, I've seen this at play with large boards. They go through roll call every single time, and I think sometimes unnecessarily. And it's just, you know, taking that extra much extra time. Okay, so definitely roll call. Use the same roll call sheet that you use for the board and populate it on the side with the names of your committee members. And have a note taker, minute taker for the committee. Identify one. You can either identify one for the next year or ask at each meeting if someone would like to volunteer to be the minute taker. Okay.
For the minutes, do we have to, I know for the board, the following month we approve them. Do we as a committee approve the minutes and then submit it to the board? Or how does that work? How do we handle it?
The committee, well, if you are going to keep minutes, those are yours.
We're not required to.
No, minutes are not required.
Oh.
Minutes are not required. And that goes to any, the board level or committee. What is required is a record of how the committee, how you voted. So normally, now we're advising that you use the vote count form, because the vote count form on the top indicates what was the motion on the paper.
Right.
And then how each board member voted, and at the bottom you sign it. Okay, and that serves as a proof, a record of how the board voted on the actions before you.
For example, tonight's meeting, I'm sorry to interrupt you, there are no motions, we're just discussing, they're all discussions. We don't have to keep a record of that.
No, I'm not saying that, I mean, they are not needed, but they are good practice. I mean, they are good practice because you want to know, particularly if some boards, you keep track of, you know, who was present, who was absent, because after so many absences, that's grounds for removal.
So do we have to write our own bylaws?
That was my question. I know the neighborhood council has a policy on absentees.
Right, and the bylaws?
Yeah, now, do we follow those same guidelines, or is there a different set of guidelines for absentee?
Yeah, no, you can adopt the same ones, you can adopt them.
We don't have to.
No, you don't need to, I mean, those are the board's bylaws, I mean, and whatever is under those bylaws that apply to you as a committee, then you need to follow those. But
So we don't have to have any policy then regarding absentee?
you know, but it's not, I mean, it's something that.
Well, if it becomes an issue, then we can bring it up, but if not, we don't need to have guidelines, is what I'm
No, there's no policy requirement that you have to, but I mean, as any, you know, group, I mean, operating out there, I mean, we definitely strongly urge you to have them so that out of the 8, if someone is constantly absent, they be effective. Most likely, I don't know, say no pressure, I mean, in that regard, not being present, not being able to cast their vote on important matters, so that may be something to consider. So, but do you have to? No, you do not have to. But, you know, definitely, you do need to comply with what the board bylaws say with regards to how we operate. For example, no more than 3 board members, unless, you know, we post that as a board meeting. Okay? No more than 3 board members, period. So that's specifically no more than 3 board members. That's our rule probably for bylaws, I think, or that derives from your bylaws. Okay? So the vote count form, that's an important tool to use for recommendations that will then go forward to the board. Okay? And the important thing of it is the reporting, and the reporting is actually done at a meeting. Okay, so when we're at the meeting tonight and you were gonna take a vote on a motion, and you do the roll call, let's say name by name, and then at the end you tally, and so that the vote was, you know, 5 in favor, 3 against. You're reporting it. That is a requirement. And then you can keep the vote count form as a record. So that when you go before the board next week or in a couple of weeks and there's a question, or what was the vote on this, or here, Madam Chair, this was the vote, how the vote came down in this matter.
Melvin, I heard recently